If you've been vibe coding at all, you've almost certainly had a few encounters with the command line. Also known as the terminal, this is the AI's favorite way of interacting with your file system, the internet, and much more. If you don't have a programming background, this can be a pretty scary place. The mouse doesn't do you any good, everything has to be typed in. There's very little graphics to help you out. And if you're not careful, you can basically blow up your entire computer. But it's also a fundamental part of software engineering and programming. And if you want to be an effective vibe coder, you have to at least know the basics. My name's Tommy Eberle. I've been a software engineer for over 5 years, and I probably personally spent over 1,000 hours in a command line. In this video, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know about the command line. I'm going to go over all the basic concepts. I'm going to explain how it interacts with the file system. And by the end of the video, you're going to be a far more confident vibe coder and be able to help the AI do your work for you much more effectively. Now, I will preface this video by saying that I use macOS, and the terminal on macOS is definitely different than the terminal or command line on Windows. A lot of the specifics are probably going to be different, but the fundamental concepts are mostly the same, and you'll still be able to get something out of this video even if you're a Windows user. With that out of the way, let's take a look at my screen here. And I want to start with us in Finder because we're going to be thinking a little bit about the file system, what files actually are, and what folders are specifically. So if we look over here, I am in Finder. And with Finder, we get a graphical interface, obviously. And so on the left-hand side, we've got favorites, iCloud, all this kind of standard Apple stuff. If we click on Tommy Eberle, which would be my home directory, we're going to see all the stuff in my home directory. If we then go to desktop, you're going to see all the folders on my messy desktop. This screen I have for you guys is clean, but my desktop on the other monitor is very, very messy. And the way that we could think about this is the desktop folder, since we're clicking on it from within my home directory, is going to be a child of my home directory. And by the way, when I'm talking about my home directory, that's because it has this home icon here, and we're going to see that in the terminal in a second. But within the home directory, we have files that would be like these MP4 files, some of the other videos that I've filmed. But then we also have folders. And so there's this hierarchical structure of all of our files. And so you'll see, for instance, I have code within my home directory. And within this code directory, I'm going to have a bunch of different repositories or folders where I store code. Now, we're talking about folders and directories. They're basically synonyms. So I would say this is the code folder, also known as the code directory. But as you might have guessed, I might have within, for instance, applications, maybe I have a folder called code, like CODE, all lowercase. That is going to be a different folder than the folder called code within my home directory. And that is because there is a hierarchy. And we're going to see that on the terminal as well. So now let's actually open the terminal. So you're going to do that on macOS. You're going to be typing in terminal over here. It is this application. You're going to definitely want to make it larger, and I'm going to make the font bigger for you guys. And we are greeted with just this. There's a lot less bells and whistles, as you can immediately see, than in the Apple Finder, or really any other application. It's all just white with text. Let's make it even bigger. And how the terminal works is you click on it to focus your cursor, and then from there you can basically throw the mouse away. We're only going to be inputting terminal commands. And let's jump over to cursor very briefly. You've probably seen the terminal in the context of cursor. This is the exact same thing as what we're going to be doing in the macOS terminal. The skin is a little different. It looks a little different. But every single command is the exact same. It's the exact same technology, the exact same files. I'm just going to show us here because I think it's a little cleaner. But if you're following along in cursor, you can definitely do that as well. It's totally the same thing. This is the terminal. We don't get very much. We can try to type stuff in, and it'll let us type stuff in. Now, with the terminal, how it works is you type in a command and then you press enter. So let's type in this command, which is complete gibberish. So let's press enter, and it's going to say command not found. Now, if you're on macOS, you might see something that says ZSH or bash. Don't worry too much about that. Those are not that important, but basically that is a synonym for terminal. So you might hear terminal, you might hear command line, you might hear bash, you might hear ZSH. Those are technically different things. I don't really want to get into that today. For your purposes, you can think of those as synonyms. So if somebody says bash, that's basically them saying the terminal. If they're saying ZSH, that's also the terminal, that's also the command line. These are all synonyms, at least for our purposes. So anyway, command not found. Well, where do I find the commands? Well, there is a manual, but honestly, you kind of just have to know them. Don't worry about memorizing this stuff. Don't worry about knowing all the commands. The AI is going to be able to help you immensely here, but you just have to understand that there are commands. And every time we're working with the terminal, we are working with a command. So let's type in a command that is real. It's called ls. So we're going to ls, and this is going to dump a bunch of text to the terminal's output. So we can see here, we see some files. It looks like some files because we see MP4. We've got, it looks like maybe a directory. We see capital A applications. If we go back into Finder, we're actually going to see everything that is in this column, which is in my home directory. We're going to see that on the left in the terminal. So basically ls, what it's going to do is list out all your files. And let's actually go and confirm that. So we see 2025, that's my beautiful face over there, 0208. So we see 2025 0208, that is this file. applications, capital A. If we look over here, we're going to see that folder. So note that ls is going to return to us not just the files, but also the folders. Let's see what else we got. We got AI for dummies.mp4. We're going to see that guy right here as well. Okay, when I said ls, it lists all my files. How did it know what directory or what folder to list the files in? Well, in the terminal, there's a very important concept, and that is called your current working directory. Anytime you're in the terminal, you are always associated with a directory. There's no way to run a terminal command outside of the context of a directory. And what do I mean by directory context? Well, the second command that we're going to learn today is called pwd, also known as print working directory. So let's type it in, hit enter, and we are going to see /users/Tommy Eberle. So that's what I mean when I say we are in the home directory. By default, when you open up a terminal, you are probably going to be in your home directory, at least if you opened it from the terminal application of macOS. And just like pretty much any other directory, the home directory has a parent. It is called /users. And /users also has a parent. It is just called /, which is this guy here, also known as the root. So your file structure is a tree. It is a hierarchy, but it doesn't go on forever. And the top level is known as the root. There is a lot of system files you're going to find in the root directory. I don't recommend you poke around in there unless you know what you're doing or are curious, but the file system does not go on forever. So always understand that when you're in the terminal, you are within the context of a directory, and that is why when I run ls, I see the files that are present in this directory. Now, what if we wanted to change directories? What if we wanted to change the directory context? Well, you would do that with what's called a cd or change directory. So you do cd, and then now we are going to actually pass what's called an argument to the command line command. So for this command, we need to give it an argument, and that is going to be the directory that we want to change into. Why don't we go into applications? So we can type in applications here, and that's going to work. I will also point out that it is very particular about spelling. So for instance, if I misspell applications by omitting this S here, it is going to say no such file or directory. It's not going to necessarily know what you mean. So what you want to do is type in everything exactly as you see it. There is no room for error. Now we are in applications. Let's run an ls, and also notice how this thing changed. This is maybe different based on your configurations, but usually this is going to display something like the current directory. And I will also note that this symbol, this is called the tilde, which you can find right under the escape key. I had to look at my keyboard there, right under the escape key on your keyboard. The tilde also means your home directory. That's just a convention from a while back. But anyway, if we do an ls in applications, we're going to see Chrome apps.localize. That is a weird file in macOS, but basically it's this folder over here. And so as you can see, sometimes some of the metadata is different in Finder and in the terminal. That's totally fine. We're looking at the same thing. What if we want to go back up a folder? Well, to go up a level, so basically, actually before we do that, let's do pwd, and we can now see that my pwd changed from /users/Tommy Eberle to /users/Tommy Eberle/applications. So that's what I mean when I say our directory has changed. Let's actually go up a level. So if I wanted to basically go back into /users/Tommy Eberle, I would do cd ... That is going to bring us a level up. And you can see here that this changed to the tilde, which means we are in the home directory. And if we do an ls, we are going to see all of my files there. Let's now go into cursor. And I want us to look at this project. So if you follow along on some of my other tutorials, I gave a tutorial on cursor in general, and we went over a game called tic-tac-toe, which I made using AI. I'm sure you played tic-tac-toe before. Basically, it's just a website to play tic-tac-toe. And I want us to actually go into cursor, and what we're going to do now is create some files using the terminal. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to open up the terminal. So if you're in cursor, you can type in right caret and then like create new terminal. That is going to pop open a terminal down here. And what you can do with this terminal is start typing in commands. So again, this is the exact same thing as the macOS terminal. We type in ls. We are going to see a bunch of files. So we see bun.lockb, components.json, eslintconfig.js. Now on the left-hand side of cursor, I have the file browser up, and we can see bun.lockb, components.json, eslint.config.js. By default, when you're in cursor, if you open up the terminal, you're going to notice that the directory that you're in is going to be the directory of your code project. So let's go and print that out. So let's do a pwd, and we are going to notice that we see /users/Tommy Eberle /code/tic-tac-toe oops. And then let's go back into Finder, and again, if we go to Tommy Eberle, so that's my home directory, and really this should say /users/Tommy Eberle if it was being a little more precise. But if we go down here, we're going to see a directory called code, and then we are going to see a directory called, if we go all the way down, tic-tac-toe oops, and then here we're going to see all those files. So here's bun.lockb, components.json, eslintconfig, bun.lockb, components.json, eslintconfig, and then if we go up again, bun.lockb, components.json, eslintconfig. So this is all the same stuff. We are in this directory. This is just to illustrate you visually where that lives in my file system. But anyway, so we are in this directory, and the terminal can do a lot of different stuff. It doesn't just show you files. It can run different programs. And one of the things it's really good at, and what the AI heavily uses it for, is creating, modifying, and deleting files. So if we wanted to create a new file using the terminal, what we would do is a command called touch. So you would say touch, and then we would name something like, I don't know, tommy.txt, and then pay attention to the file browser on the left as I hit enter here. Notice that that just created a file called tommy.txt. So now we can go ahead and type stuff in. So hey guys, what's up? Here's another command. It's called cat. It's actually going to print out the contents of the file. And as you can see here, that is the contents of the file. That all works. You probably won't be inputting these commands yourself, but this is just to illustrate the types of things that the AI is likely doing with the terminal. If you want to move the file, or rather rename, so you could in Cursor go over and right click this and hit rename, and you could say like, I don't know, tommy2.txt. And then now notice that this changed here. And if we go up in the terminal and hit cat tommy.txt, now it's going to say, hey man, there's no such file as tommy.txt. So let's do an ls, and we're going to see that there is now tommy2.txt. And so if I go up and I move my cursor over and hit Tommy2, now we're going to see the contents of the file. Well, if we wanted to move that back, we could actually do that with a terminal command. This one is called move. So you can type in mv for move, and then you're going to type in tommy2.txt. That is the first argument. The second argument is going to be the destination. So this could be read as move the file tommy2.txt into a file called tommy.txt and delete the old file. And then we're going to hit move. And then now notice that cursor's complaining because this file doesn't exist anymore. If we go over on the left-hand side, we are now going to see tommy.txt. Well, what if instead of renaming, we wanted to actually make a copy? Well, you can do that as well with a terminal command. It's called copy or cp, and it works very similarly. You're just going to type in the source file, which is the first argument, and then the destination file. So that's going to be tommy2.txt. And then again, pay attention to the left-hand side here where we're going to be able to actually see the file. And boom, there it is in tommy2.txt. You can see that the contents are exactly the same. If we want to make a folder, there's also a command for that. It's called make dir or make directory. We could say my folder. And if we look over here, we are going to see my folder. It is, of course, empty. Now, the terminal, this is where it gets a little hairy, especially if you're not exactly sure what you're doing. It can delete files. And so what we can do here is we can type in rm, which means remove, and we can type in tommy.txt. And what's important to note here is there's no take backsies. Once you do this, it's pretty much going to happen. And it's not going to warn you that you're doing something that might be dangerous. So if this had a bunch of really secret information and you go, oops, I just hit enter, that's gone. And it's actually really hard to recover that, especially if you do this in a directory that you're not really supposed to be in. So be very careful running a command like this. And the AI will probably be running some RMs on your behalf. It's generally pretty good, but this is what I mean when I say the terminal can be very dangerous. And for instance, if you were somewhere in the root directory where there's a bunch of files that like literally need to be there to make your computer work properly, if you're going in there and removing a bunch of stuff, you could see how that could turn really hairy. Now, even scarier would actually be rm-rf, and we're going to delete the node modules directory. Let's look at node modules. This is where your dependencies are installed. Not really too important, but just look how much crap is in here. We have a ton of different files. This folder has like probably thousands of different files, and with just one command, it's all going to be wiped away forever. Now that's gone, and notice that this is completely gone. Again, there's no taking that back. That entire folder is gone. So if you were a little bit uncareful, you could do something like this, and do not do this under any circumstances, but this is an extremely dangerous command. So that's what I mean to say when the terminal is very powerful, but it can also really put you in a bad situation if you don't know what you're doing. And I don't say this to scare you, but you just have to know this stuff. So anyway, we can delete directories. The other thing that Cursor or any AI coding assistant is probably going to be doing is actually running your program. So in this case, if we go into what's called package.json, so that's going to be over here on the left, we're going to see a bunch of scripts. And again, if you're doing any kind of JavaScript project, you are going to see this file. Don't worry if you understand everything, but this is kind of like a bunch of terminal commands that the AI could run to start your project. And generally, excuse me, I don't want to do that. Generally, what the command is going to be is dev. That's going to be the command to start up your project. So when you're talking to the AI and saying, hey, run my project, it needs to be able to run terminal commands in order to do that. And similarly, when you're talking to the AI and saying, hey, implement my feature, when it's inspecting your code base, it's running terminal commands to figure out where the files are, to read through different files, to make changes to files, and all of that stuff. So now let's open up the chat. So we're going to do Command I. And what we're going to do here is we're going to say, run my project. We're going to say run my project because I want to be able to run it locally. And it's going to read through package.json, so that's this file that I showed you here, and it's figuring out what scripts it needs to run. And look, these are terminal commands, so we should recognize at least this first one. It's CD'd into the code directory, so it made sure it was in the right place, and then it ran a command that's called npm run dev. Basically, that just means run this guy. npm is a separate program. You don't need to worry about it for this, but this is just to illustrate again what the AI is actually doing. We could have run these commands ourselves. If we look here, I think it should let us hit it. I don't know if it's gonna be reached. Okay, so it didn't really seem to work. Oh, click to focus. Okay, cool. So it actually didn't find one of the commands, and that's probably because I deleted the node modules. But if we look here, this is literally the terminal that the AI used. And so if we look here, we copy and paste this, we are gonna get the exact same output, even though that was us doing it manually, because that's really all that the AI is doing. Now, we had an error here, so we probably wanna tell it about this. There was an error. And then it's gonna be able to figure out that I deleted that node modules folder, and then it needs to go and reinstall it again. Look what it's doing here. It's going into that directory, and then here we actually have the output. So again, this would look exactly the same on this terminal if I was running the commands myself. I'm just having the AI do it in its own little context. And that's why you can see here, open in terminal. We get a live view of the npm install, and you'll notice that our node modules are returning. So you don't have to worry too much if you're in your code directory, but just be very careful doing anything in the terminal outside of your little walled garden here. And then it's gonna actually run npm run dev. And if we click to focus again, we're gonna be over here, and it's gonna give us the place to click. So let's click, and then we are gonna be in our tic-tac-toe game, which again, we added the sign into recently. So when you're talking to the AI, it is heavily going to be utilizing the terminal. This is something where it just doesn't go away. And the terminal, it's been around for a long time. Like the command line was one of the first ways that we interacted with computers. And a lot of the terminal programs haven't changed in 50 years. I don't expect it to change even with AI. And it really is just like a fundamental part of dealing with computers and being effective at using computers. So that's why it's so important. So that's the end of the video. I hope you guys found it useful. Drop a comment below if you'd be interested in getting a free coaching session with me. If you've been working on vibe coding, even something with N8N, I'd be happy to sit down with you for 30 minutes and walk you through whatever you're stuck with. I'm doing this for free to the first 5 people that comment below that they're interested in coaching. I'll shoot you a link how to book. It's completely free. Hopefully you guys like it. Let me know what you thought of the video, and have a great day.